Let's get into some of the individuals then and the questions that they brought up after the weekend. Cristiano Ronaldo may be the biggest of those. So in terms of the questions that we were asked, Gabriel said, do you think from a football standpoint that signing Ronaldo wasn't the best idea? I mean, this has turned around pretty quickly, hasn't it, considering how excited we all were when Ronaldo signed. Michael Cox has written a great piece on The Athletic. Go and have a look about the tactical issues that Ronaldo or the tactical issues around Ronaldo, shall we say, and how other clubs have coped with a lack of pressing. It's beginning to irritate me how much people are criticising how much he presses, because we were talking about this before he even signed for United, that he doesn't press. Now, you're not suddenly going to get him to press, are you? So Michael's sort of gone into this idea that other players around him need to be able to sort of make up for that if you are going to press. I mean, Andy, should Ronaldo be dropped? Are we at that point already? The reaction is so strong, considering how excited we were literally 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he's more or less scored a goal a game so far as well.
The mood around him has slumped. I mean, you could argue pretty strongly that he's making Manchester United worse, not better at the moment. He's never been someone to press. He wasn't the first time round. I said in a recent podcast that I spoke to one of his former teammates who said it was Wayne Rooney and Carlos Tevez who did a lot of the running for him that time. But Manchester United now look worse and better when it's Mason Greenwood and Edinson Cavani who finished last season in a much stronger position. Do you drop Ronaldo? It's a huge shout. You know, he's such an important player, ego, person within football. He wasn't bought to be dropped. He was bought to play almost all the time and score. And he has been scoring, but he's been really ineffective in recent weeks. So he was dropped against Everton. United actually were playing quite well until Everton scored. There were positives to be drawn from that. And he played that against a backdrop of, Sir Alex Ferguson's conversation being made public, which was a bit out of order, but it was being made public that you should pick your best players. But is Cristiano Ronaldo one of Manchester United's best players at the moment? I think you can argue pretty strongly that he isn't. He's been pretty anonymous in several matches recently. He needs players around him. And I know that Edinson Cavani is not a 21-year-old, but I've seen him make some runs in matches where you think, wow, you are defying your age. I've seen less of that from Ronaldo. What I do know is in the dressing room, his signing was welcomed. It was seen as a positive influence by the other players. There's no disharmony there with Ronaldo being there. From a commercial perspective, absolutely no problems whatsoever there. They've completely welcomed it. But you look at that team at the moment and you think that there is a problem there. And when Ollie talked about needing to make a big decision, maybe that is to drop Cristiano Ronaldo. And I can't really believe we're having this conversation so soon. It feels like you've bought the bad ticket in a lottery, because he's been so good wherever he's been. There's never been any doubts about him. There was never any conversations about him at Madrid or at Juventus about dropping him. And now we're talking about dropping him, and we won't make the decision. But again, we know what we're watching. We can see for ourselves. And it's pretty worrying.
I wonder if we're at the point where people are eating dessert again at the training ground, Laurie, don't you?
Yeah, I'd love to know exactly.
3 sugars in my tea, please.
Who's had the tiramisu?
3.
Obviously, I think he gave us such a rocket fuel of jubilation amongst the squad. I don't think you can kind of look back and go, it was a mistake of a signing because of the caliber.
Those conclusions.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's otherwise we'll just look like a heart rate monitor that goes up and down and kind of we'll get.
That's been a bit like that.
Yeah, we'll get whiplash sort of turning our neck so much, but. I think he had to be signed, particularly with the way that Man City it looked like they were going to get him. It just means that there's more kind of consideration in terms of how United are going to function, because Solskjaer had got this team where you've got a young kind of vibrant forward line. Okay, I'm saying Cavani within that because he kind of plays like, as Andy says, plays like a mid-20-year-old. And now you kind of have to adjust it. So it's just a bit of time to kind of figure that out. So, and Ronaldo is a bonus. You can't take away that his experience, his pedigree, his technique. I mean, he did go close to scoring against Leicester. Kasper Schmeichel pulled off a decent save, but generally it felt a bit awkward. And obviously he stayed on the pitch the whole time. It's when you need a goal, he's not a guy that you take off in that situation. That would have brought even more eyeballs to that, particular dynamic. But it just clearly it's sort of, horses for courses, maybe, where Ronaldo actually starts against certain teams and doesn't against others. Leicester, you could tell the way they were going to play with Vardy and Iheanacho up front in terms of hassling United's defence. And we'll get on to Harry Maguire's performance, I think. But equally on the flip side, you knew how they were going to play in defence, and was Ronaldo the right sort of profile of player to contend with that? It's really interesting having Marcus Rashford back. He looked sharp, straight from the get-go. Obviously scored a really good goal. Mason Greenwood. And then, you're kind of thinking that's quite a young, vibrant forward line if they can kind of get a sort of relationship going as they have done previously. So the Ronaldo thing will always be something that we'll talk about, for the next 2 years that he's at the club. And clearly it's an issue to be ironed out. There's certainly some wrinkles there. But I think it's a bit too soon to say, it was it's a mistake or anything like that.
Andy, what happened to Harry Maguire?
Well, he had a decent Euros, didn't he? And then he's come back this season.
He didn't have a decent 90 minutes at Leicester, did he? I mean, he's not
had a decent season. And I don't know whether there's a parallel there with Luke Shaw. They were two of our best players last season. And they're two players you would expect to start all of the time. And Ollie's been loyal to them. I think what happened at Leicester is he was prepared to risk Harry Maguire more than he was prepared to risk Eric Bailly. So that shows the perception that the manager has him, Eric Bailly. And that is why Raphael Varane was signed. So, it's a bit unlucky to be missing two central defenders. And that can cost you dearly. You saw how badly Liverpool suffered last year when they had all those defensive injuries. Ultimately, it cost them a title challenge. And I can see why Ollie took a risk on him. I've seen pretty cheeky comments from some United fans saying it was Maguire's best game for Leicester, which is a pretty dark line in humour. But it was horrific, that mistake. And I think with Maguire, towards the end of last season, when he was absent, people started to really appreciate how good he was when he wasn't there. And he almost became a better player when he wasn't there. And there were some other sort of sidelines. His whole family went to Gdansk, for example, even though they knew that he wasn't going to be playing in the hope that he was going to lift the cup. So showed that his family are really invested into Manchester United. He is as well. Popular in the dressing room, he's a decent player, but he's not having a good season. Varane is still finding his feet. I've no doubt that Varane will be absolutely top notch. I think the defender who comes out of this season, the central defender with the most credit, would be Victor Lindelof. He's always been rated by those at the club. I've been completely consistent about that. Never any danger of him being sold when Raphael Varane came in. Things are looking pretty bleak for Eric Bailly. Axel Twanzebe was sold as well. And with Maguire, he'll know himself that he's not playing well. And when you concede errors like that, I mean, it was a beautiful finish. They both were those first two goals, but Ronaldo could have put Manchester United 2-0 up, and suddenly you're then in a situation where it was 1-1 with Leicester looking far more dangerous. But it wasn't just him. Leicester's first main attack came when Paul Pogba lost the ball, which goes back to the point that Laurie touched on about why United are playing Fred and McTominay. They feel it gives cover and security and legs because they'll chase for everything, which some of the other players don't do. I won't say that players down tools at Leicester, but there's a huge gap between how good they should have played and the actual reality. It wasn't just Harry Maguire. Several of those players were really poor.